They thought I was losing my mind. That's what happens when you turn 82. Suddenly every forgotten name, every misplaced key becomes evidence that you're declining. But let me tell you something. My mind is sharper than the kitchen knife I've been using for 40 years. And what I discovered about my own family would cut deeper than any blade. Before I tell you what really happened, I want to thank you for listening. Drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. It means the world to this old woman. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps more than you know. Now, let me tell you about the inheritance they never expected. It started with the whispers. You know, the ones, hushed conversations that stop the moment you walk into the room. My daughter Linda and my son-in-law Marcus would be huddled over their phones at Sunday dinner, then suddenly switch to talking about the weather when I appeared. Just work stuff, Mom, Linda would say, that tight smile stretched across her face like plastic wrap. But I wasn't born yesterday. I raised 4 children, buried a husband, and survived the kind of hardships that teach you to read people like open books. Something was wrong. The first real sign came when Linda suggested I move into Sunset Manor. It's not a nursing home, Mom, she said, spreading glossy brochures across my kitchen table like she was dealing cards. It's assisted living. You'd have your own apartment, activities, people your age to talk to. I looked at those brochures, all smiling elderly faces and pristine common rooms, and felt something cold settle in my stomach. I'm managing just fine here, I said. But are you? Marcus chimed in. He was leaning against my counter like he owned the place. Linda found expired milk in your fridge last week. And Mrs. Henderson next door said she saw you watering your garden at midnight. I water when it's cool, I said. Always have. They exchanged that look. The one that says, see. She's losing it. Linda pulled out a leather folder. Mom, we've been doing some research. The average cost of home care, when you need it, is $5,000 a month. Assisted living is only $2,800. It's actually more economical. More economical. As if my life was a business expense they were trying to optimize. And safer, Marcus added. What if you fall? What if you have a medical emergency? Here, you'd be all alone. There, you'd have 24-hour staff. I wanted to tell him that I'd lived through the 1960s, raised 4 children as a single mother for 3 years while Harold was deployed, managed our family finances through 2 recessions, and buried my husband without falling apart. But they weren't interested in my resume. I need time to think, I said. Of course, Linda said, too quickly. But don't take too long. These places have waiting lists. After they left, I sat in Harold's old chair and thought about what was really happening. My house, the one Harold and I bought in 1967, where we raised our children, where we dreamed of growing old together, it was worth nearly $500,000 now. The neighborhood had changed, property values had soared, and suddenly my little 3-bedroom ranch was a goldmine. And my children were circling like vultures. Over the next few weeks, the pressure mounted. My son David started calling more often, his voice dripping with manufactured concern. Mom, Linda told me about the assisted living place. It sounds wonderful. Really wonderful. I don't need assistance, I said. But what if you fall? What if something happens? We worry about you being all alone in that big house. Big house. 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom was considered big now. And think about it, David continued, no more yard work, no more repairs, no more worrying about pipes freezing or the roof leaking. You could just relax and enjoy your golden years. Golden years. As if being dismissed and discarded was something to celebrate. Then came my youngest, Sarah, with her perfectly manicured nails and designer handbag. She'd always been the most direct of my children. "Mom, we're just thinking about your safety. And your happiness. Wouldn't it be nice to have people around, activities, maybe even make some new friends?" "I have friends," I said. "Mrs. Patterson moved to Florida. Mrs. Chen is in memory care. Mrs. Rodriguez." She trailed off. Mrs. Rodriguez had died 6 months ago. Sarah knew that. "Look," Sarah continued, sitting down across from me with that serious expression she'd worn since childhood, when she wanted something. "We know change is hard. But this could be a fresh start. A chance to enjoy your golden years without all the stress of maintaining a house." "This house isn't stress," I said. "It's home." "But Mom, you're 82. How much longer can you realistically keep up with everything? The lawn, the maintenance, the cleaning. And what happens when you can't drive anymore? You'll be trapped here." Trapped. That's what she thought my life was, a trap. Sarah leaned forward, taking my hands in hers. "We love you too much to watch you struggle when there's a better option available." The manipulation was so smooth, so practiced, I almost missed it. They'd rehearsed this. That evening, I called my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson. She was about my age, sharp as a tack, and had no patience for nonsense. "Eleanor," I said, "did you really tell Linda you saw me watering my garden at midnight?" There was a pause. "Honey, I never talked to your Linda about anything." "Why would I?" "She said you were concerned about me." Mrs. Henderson snorted. "The only thing I'm concerned about is why your children keep driving by your house at odd hours, slowing down like they're casing the joint." My blood went cold. "What do you mean?" "Last week, I saw that son-in-law of yours, Marcus, taking pictures of your house with his phone. And your David was measuring something in your driveway with one of those tape measures. I thought maybe you were having work done." "I wasn't having work done." "Eleanor," Mrs. Henderson continued, "I don't mean to pry, but are you okay? Is everything all right with your family?" "I'm beginning to wonder," I said. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I got dressed, did my hair, and drove downtown to the courthouse. At my age, you learn that when something feels wrong, it usually is. At the property records office, a young clerk helped me pull up information about my house. What I found made my stomach drop. Your property was appraised 3 weeks ago," she said, pointing at her computer screen. "Market value assessment shows $485,000. I didn't request an appraisal." She frowned. "According to this, it was requested by..." She scrolled down, "David Williams. Is that a relative?" "My son." My son had been having my house appraised behind my back. Are you okay? You look pale." I gripped the edge of her desk. "I'm fine. Just, can you print that for me?" Walking back to my car with that paper in my hands, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades, pure, cold rage. Not the quick flash of anger that comes and goes, but the deep, burning fury that changes everything. They weren't trying to help me. They were trying to cash me in. That weekend, all 3 of my children showed up together. Coordinated. Planned. Linda brought Chinese takeout, David carried flowers, and Sarah had a bottle of wine. The holy trinity of guilt gifts. "We wanted to talk to you about Sunset Manor," Linda began after we'd eaten. "I scheduled a tour for Tuesday. Just to look. And I talked to a realtor," David added casually, as if he were mentioning the weather. "You know, just to get an idea of what houses in the neighborhood are going for these days." Sarah poured herself more wine. "It's crazy, Mom. Your house is worth almost $500,000. Can you believe that? Oh, I could believe it. I had the appraisal in my purse. That's a lot of money just sitting there, Marcus said. He'd been quiet through dinner, but now he leaned forward with dollar signs in his eyes. Money that could be working for you, earning interest, paying for your care. My care. I repeated. Well, assisted living isn't free, Linda said. But if we sell the house, there'd be more than enough to cover your expenses for as long as you need. For as long as I live, she meant. They were calculating my life expectancy. And any leftover, David added, would be preserved for your grandchildren's education. It's really the smartest financial move. I set down my teacup with a clink that seemed to echo through the room. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, I said slowly. You want me to move to assisted living, sell my home of 55 years, and use the proceeds to pay for my own warehousing until I die. Mom, that's not how we'd put it, Sarah said. How would you put it? Silence. Because here's what I'm hearing, I continued. You think I'm too old and incompetent to live in my own home. You think my house is wasted on me. You think I should be grateful for the privilege of paying for my own exile, while you calculate what's left over for your inheritance. That's not, Linda started. Isn't it? I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 82 years. David, when did you have my house appraised? His face went white. What? 3 weeks ago. Without my knowledge or permission. You had a stranger come to my home, and put a price tag on my life. The room went silent except for the ticking of Harold's old clock on the mantel. You want to know something? I walked to the mantel and picked up our wedding photo. Your father and I bought this house when Linda was 3 years old. We saved for 2 years for the down payment. Harold worked double shifts at the plant, and I took in sewing to make ends meet. I turned the photo so they could see it. We painted every room ourselves. Built that back deck with our own hands. Harold planted those oak trees you used to climb. This house isn't just where I live. It's where you grew up. It's where your father died, where I held his hand and promised him I'd be okay. I set the photo down and faced them. And now you want to warehouse me so you can sell our memories to the highest bidder. Mom, it's not about the money, Linda said, but her voice was shaking. Isn't it? Then let's do an experiment. What if I told you I was thinking about donating the house to charity when I die? How would that make you feel? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. David was the first to crack. That would be a waste. I mean, we're your children. We're your family. Are you? I asked quietly. Because family doesn't lie to each other. Family doesn't manipulate each other. Family doesn't treat each other like problems to be solved or assets to be liquidated. Sarah started crying. Not the pretty tears she used to get her way as a child, but ugly, desperate sobs. We do love you, Mom. We really do. No, I said firmly. You love what I represent. You love my house, my bank account, the inheritance you think you're entitled to. But me. The person. You stopped seeing me years ago. I walked to the kitchen and pulled a manila envelope from the drawer. Inside were the documents I'd had prepared after my visit to the courthouse. You want to know what I've been doing while you've been whispering about my decline? I've been planning. Really planning. I spread the papers across the coffee table. I've established a trust. This house, my savings, my life insurance policy, it's all protected now. You can't pressure me into selling, and you can't declare me incompetent without a lengthy legal battle that will cost more than you'd ever recover. Their faces were a mixture of shock and panic. But more importantly, I continued, I've revised my will. This house is being donated to the local historical society. When I die, it becomes a community center. There's a plaque going up next week, future home of the Harold Williams Community Center. You can't do that. David stood up, his face red with rage. That's our inheritance. No, David. It was never your inheritance. It was my house, bought with my money and my husband's sweat. You're not entitled to it just because you share my DNA. But we're your children. Sarah wailed. Are you? I asked again. Because children visit their parents. Children care about their parents' happiness, not just their property values. Children don't conspire to put their mother away so they can liquidate her life. The room erupted. 30 years of family dysfunction spilled out like water from a broken dam. Accusations flying, voices raised, ugly truths finally spoken aloud. But I just sat there, calm as could be, watching them reveal exactly who they really were. Marcus was the most honest. Do you have any idea what you're throwing away? $500,000, just gone. For what? Spite. For principle, I said. For the idea that a person's worth isn't measured by their real estate portfolio. This is insane, Linda said. You're being irrational. Am I? Let me ask you something, Linda. When's the last time you visited me just to visit? Not because you needed something, not because you were checking up on the declining old lady, but just because you wanted to spend time with your mother. She opened her mouth, then closed it. David. When's the last time you called me to ask how I was feeling, what I was thinking, whether I was lonely or scared, or just needed someone to talk to? His face flushed red. Sarah. When's the last time you saw me as anything other than a problem to be solved? The silence stretched until it became unbearable. That's what I thought, I said quietly. You've been invisible to me for years. You stopped seeing me as a person, and started seeing me as an asset to be managed. Well, congratulations. You've successfully managed me right out of your lives. They left that night in a storm of anger and threats. Linda said she'd contest the will. David said I'd regret this. Sarah said I was being cruel and unfair. But it was my grandson Tyler who came back. Sweet Tyler, barely 22, still in college, still honest enough to look his grandmother in the eye and apologize for his family. Grandma, he said, sitting in Harold's old chair, I'm sorry. For all of them. This isn't right. You don't need to apologize for them, honey. Yes, I do. Because I knew. I knew what they were planning, and I didn't say anything. I should have warned you. I reached over and patted his hand. You're here now. That's what matters. Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Word got out about my decision to donate the house to the community center. Not through my children, they were too embarrassed to admit what they'd tried to do, but through Mrs. Henderson and the other neighbors who'd watched the whole drama unfold. The response was overwhelming. Mrs. Patterson called from Florida. Eleanor, honey, I heard what happened. Good for you. Family isn't about blood, it's about love and respect. Mrs. Kim from down the street stopped by with homemade soup. I lost my mother last year, she said. She went through something similar with my brother. I wish she'd had your courage. Even strangers reached out. A woman named Janet, whose mother had been pressured into selling her home by her own children. An elderly man whose family had tried to have him declared incompetent so they could control his finances. I wasn't alone. This was happening everywhere, to families everywhere. Children looking at their aging parents and seeing dollar signs instead of people. But the most unexpected visitor was my daughter-in-law, Jennifer. David's wife, who'd always been quiet during family gatherings, always deferring to her husband. She came on a Tuesday afternoon, nervous and fidgeting with her purse strap. "Eleanor," she said, "I need to apologize. For David, for myself, for all of us." "Jen, you don't need to." "Yes, I do." She sat down hard, like her legs had given out. "I knew what they were planning. I participated in it. We had spreadsheets, Eleanor. Actual spreadsheets calculating your life expectancy, and the cost of care versus the value of the house." My stomach turned. David said it was just being practical. Planning ahead. Making sure you were taken care of. But when I heard him on the phone with the realtor, talking about staging the house and quick turnaround times, she started crying. I realized we weren't talking about taking care of you. We were talking about getting rid of you. She looked up at me with Harold's brown eyes. David had inherited them, passed them down to his children. "I have kids, Eleanor. Someday they'll be adults, and I'll be old. What kind of example am I setting? What am I teaching them about how to treat people they love?" I handed her a tissue and waited while she composed herself. "David is furious with me for coming here. He says I'm betraying the family. But I think the family betrayed itself a long time ago." That evening, Tyler came for dinner. He'd been doing that more often since the confrontation, showing up with groceries and helping me cook meals that were too big for one person. "Grandma," he said as we cleaned dishes, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you ever regret it? I mean, you could be set for life. No financial worries, everything taken care of. Instead, you're basically alone." I dried my hands on the dish towel Harold and I had gotten as a wedding gift 58 years ago. "Tyler, honey, they weren't offering to take care of me. They were offering to manage my decline. There's a difference." I led him to the living room, where we sat in the chairs Harold and I used to occupy every evening, reading or watching TV, or just talking about our days. "Your generation thinks being old means being helpless. But I'm not helpless. I'm experienced. I've lived through things that would break people half my age. I've buried my husband, raised 4 children, survived cancer, managed our finances through 2 recessions, and kept this family together for decades." I gestured around the room. "This house isn't just where I live. It's where I belong. It's where your grandfather proposed to me on Christmas Eve 1963. It's where your father took his first steps, where your Aunt Linda had her first heartbreak, where we celebrated every birthday and holiday and milestone for more than half a century." Tyler was quiet, listening. They wanted to erase all of that so they could cash out. But some things are worth more than money. "What will happen to the community center?" he asked. "It'll serve families like ours," I said. "Maybe other elderly people who need a place to gather, to feel valued instead of invisible. Maybe it'll offer programs to help families navigate aging without turning it into a transaction. Will you see it happen?" I smiled. "Probably not. But that's okay. The best legacies are the ones that outlive us." Months passed. Linda called once, asking if I'd come to my senses yet. David drove by the house occasionally, but never stopped. Sarah sent a birthday card with no personal message, just her signature. But Tyler kept coming. He brought his girlfriend, Maya, who turned out to be studying social work with a focus on elder care. "Mrs. Williams," she said during one of their visits, "what you're doing is important. The research shows that elderly people who age in place maintain better physical and mental health than those in institutional settings. But families don't know how to support that. They think love means control, I said. Exactly. They think keeping you safe means keeping you contained. Maya became a regular visitor, and through her, I met other young people who understood what I was trying to do. Students writing papers on elder care, social workers dealing with family conflicts, even some lawyers who specialized in protecting elderly people from financial abuse by their own relatives. I wasn't the crazy old woman anymore. I was the woman who fought back. One day in late spring, Tyler brought someone new with him. A man about my age, distinguished looking, with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Grandma, this is Frank Morrison. He's been following your story." Frank shook my hand. "Mrs. Williams, I hope you don't mind the intrusion. My daughter tried to do something similar to me last year. Move me out of my home, take control of my finances. I wasn't as brave as you were. What did you do?" "I gave in. Sold my house, moved to a facility. It was miserable. But hearing about what you did, it inspired me to fight back." "And?" He grinned. "I moved out of the facility, bought a small condo, and changed my will. My daughter isn't speaking to me, but I've never been happier." Frank became a friend, then something more. Not romantic, we were both too old and too wise for that kind of drama, but companionate. We understood each other in a way that's rare at any age. Together, we started meeting with other elderly people facing similar situations. Support groups, really, but we called them dignity circles. People sharing strategies for maintaining independence, for protecting themselves from financial abuse, for finding the line between accepting help and surrendering control. The Harold Williams Community Center was still years away from reality, but the spirit of it was already growing. One evening, as Frank and I sat on the back deck watching the sunset through Harold's oak trees, he asked, "Do you miss them? Your children?" I thought about it for a long time. "I miss the children they used to be," I said finally. "I miss the little girl who used to help me bake cookies, and the little boy who used to fall asleep on my lap during thunderstorms. But the adults they became. The ones who looked at me and saw a bank account with legs. I don't miss them at all." "That's sad." "It is. But it's also freeing. For the first time in years, I'm living for myself instead of managing other people's expectations of me." On my 83rd birthday, I didn't set a table for 5 and wait for people who wouldn't come. Instead, I reserved the community room at the library and invited everyone who'd actually shown up in my life over the past year. Tyler and Maya were there, of course. Frank brought his son from California, a good son who visited because he wanted to, not because he had to. Mrs. Henderson came, along with several other neighbors. The social workers and lawyers I'd met through the dignity circles. Even Jennifer showed up, though without David. We ate potluck food and told stories and laughed until our sides hurt. When it came time for cake, Tyler stood up to make a toast. "To Grandma Eleanor," he said, raising his glass of punch, "who taught us that getting older doesn't mean getting smaller. Who showed us that dignity isn't negotiable. And who proved that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to let them treat you badly." Everyone cheered, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, pure, uncomplicated joy. Later that evening, as Frank walked me to my door, I looked up at the stars and thought about Harold. About what he would think of the choices I'd made. I kept my promise. I whispered to the night sky. "I'm okay. I'm more than okay." The house was quiet when I went inside, but it wasn't the hollow kind of quiet I'd lived with for so long. It was peaceful quiet. Contented quiet. I made a cup of tea and sat in Harold's chair, looking around at the room where we'd built our life together. The scratches on the coffee table from when the kids did homework. The worn spot in the carpet where Harold used to pace when he was thinking. The bookshelf full of stories we'd read together. My children thought this was just a house. But they were wrong. It was a legacy. Not the kind you inherit, but the kind you earn. And someday, when I'm gone, it'll keep serving families. Not as property to be divided, but as a place where people can come together, where the elderly can be valued instead of managed, where love means respect instead of control. That's the inheritance I'm leaving. Not money in a bank account, but an idea that every person, regardless of age, deserves to be seen as more than the sum of their assets. My children wanted to cash me out. Instead, I cashed in on my own worth. And that's a legacy no one can take away. 3 years later, I'm still here. Still in my house, still independent, still fighting the good fight. The Harold Williams Community Center is closer to reality now. We've raised enough money to begin renovations when the time comes. My health is good, my mind is sharp, and my heart is full. Not because my children learned to love me better, but because I learned to love myself enough to demand better. Linda calls occasionally, usually when she needs something. David drives by but never stops. Sarah sends Christmas cards with no personal messages. But Tyler visits every week. Maya is working on her master's thesis about elder abuse by family members. Frank and I have been together for 3 years now, and he's the best companion I could have asked for. The Dignity Circles have grown into a real organization. We've helped dozens of elderly people protect themselves from financial abuse, maintain their independence, and find their voices when their families try to silence them. Last month, a woman named Rose came to one of our meetings. Her son had been pressuring her to sell her condo and move in with him and his wife. They said it was for her safety, but Rose suspected they wanted her monthly social security check to help with their mortgage. "I don't know what to do," she said, crying. "He's my only child. If I say no, I might lose him forever." "Rose," I said gently, "if he truly loves you, he won't abandon you for refusing to be exploited. And if he does abandon you for that reason, then you haven't lost a son, you've lost a user." She looked at me with wide, scared eyes. "But what if I end up alone?" I smiled. "Honey, there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. I live alone, but I'm surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not what I have. That's not loneliness, that's freedom." 6 months later, Rose still lives in her condo. Her son was angry at first, but eventually he came around. He realized that respecting his mother's choices was more important than accessing her assets. Not every story has a happy ending. Some adult children never learn. Some elderly parents never find the courage to fight back. But every person who stands up, who says, "I am worth more than my bank account," makes it easier for the next person to do the same. That's what I'm most proud of. Not that I saved my house, but that I helped other people save themselves. The other day, Tyler brought his new baby daughter to visit. Little Emma, with Harold's brown eyes and Tyler's gentle spirit. As I held her, I thought about the world she'll grow up in. Hopefully, it'll be a world where elderly people are valued for their wisdom instead of resented for their longevity. Where families support each other's dignity, instead of exploiting each other's vulnerabilities. "Grandma," Tyler said softly, "I want Emma to know you. The real you. I want her to understand what you did, why it mattered." I kissed Emma's forehead and smiled. "She will. Because you'll tell her. You'll tell her that her great-great-grandmother wasn't just someone who got old and got in the way. She was someone who got old and got wise. Someone who fought for the right to be seen as a person instead of a problem." Emma gurgled and grabbed my finger with her tiny hand. "And maybe," I continued, "when she's old someday, she'll remember that story. She'll remember that age is not a disease to be managed, but a gift to be honored. As the sun set through Harold's oak trees, now towering giants providing shade for the whole neighborhood, I felt the deep satisfaction that comes from a life well lived and a fight well fought. I may be 85 now, but I'm not invisible. I'm not a burden. I'm not a problem to be solved. I'm Eleanor Williams, Harold's wife, mother to 4 ungrateful children and 1 wonderful grandson, friend to anyone who values dignity over dollars. And I'm still here. Thank you for listening to another Granny Speaks story. Remember, your voice matters at every age. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Your worth isn't measured by your utility to others, but by your inherent value as a human being. If you're facing similar struggles, reach out. Find your dignity circle. Protect your independence. And never, ever let anyone make you feel invisible. Because you're not.